What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel, and today I have video number 2, and that is my top 10 tips for generating more pressure with your defensive line using the new defensive line skill stick here in Madden 21. Now, this is going to be really crucial for you guys in order to be successful with your pass rushers here in Madden 21. You're going to need to know to do these 10 things, and you'll be able to increase the pressure that you get with your players here in Madden 21. Now, the first thing, and this is probably obvious to you guys, and that is knowing your stats of your players, especially your pass rushing players. Obviously, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, we're going to have Dupree, we're going to have TJ Watt, and then we're going to have the defensive linemen of Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith, and Stephon Tuitt as our potential pass rushers. And knowing what these players are capable of, what their skill sets are, and how they match up against the offensive line is crucial to determining how you want to utilize these players. So Dupree, for example, if we look at his player card, he is more of a finesse pass rusher, at least in terms of his speed, and so people might be fooled into just doing finesse moves with him. However, when you actually get down to it and realize what Dupree is all about, he is more skillful in terms of his power moves. He's more effective as a bull rusher, more effective doing power style moves, and so this is the type of player that you could probably get away with doing both types of moves whenever you're going up against the offensive line. You could do skill moves, you could do power moves, and probably get away with them and get pressure with both. But if we want to be especially effective with Dupree, we want to utilize him as a power rusher, and also knowing his speed and things like that allows us to know that he can effectively get around the edge with a speed rush. However, if we look at a defensive lineman like a Cam Hayward, for example, he is going to be much more effective as a power rusher or a bull rusher. If we look at his finesse moves, he's only got 73, so generally speaking, we're not going to be successful trying to execute spin moves or swim moves or something that might take a little bit more skill than that. We're going to be most effective using Cam Hayward to utilize the bull rush move and the bull rush mechanic and do a straightforward rush to put pressure on the quarterback or put the offensive lineman on their back. So knowing the skills of your pass rushers is number one and probably one of the most key things to get more pressure as you're going through here in Madden 21. Now, the next tip is knowing the offensive lineman's stats. Before every game, you should probably be aware of what you're going up against. If I'm trying to pass rush against Alejandro Villanueva, I should be aware that he is a good pass blocker. And if I want to get pressure, I might want to target players like Chukwuma Okorafor or players like Matt Filer that are a little bit less effective as pass blockers. I might not want to pass rush as heavily against a guy like DeCastro or Marquise Pouncey, who are much better pass blockers. I might want to focus on those other offensive linemen and likewise select the correct player to go up against the worst offensive lineman if I'm trying to generate more pressure. If you're not aware of what the offensive line of the other team has, then you're probably going to be out of position or at a disadvantage because you could be pass rushing against a very good pass blocker with somebody that has no hopes of beating them. So that is tip number 2. The tip number 3 is learning to use the correct moves for the correct style of player. So if I jump into the practice mode real quick, I want to talk about Cam Hayward, for example. Cam Hayward is a player that I know from the very beginning is best as a bull rush style player. So when I utilize him, I tend not to use much other than the bull rush. The bull rush is going to be one of the most effective moves for him. See, as you guys can see there, I pushed over the offensive lineman and was able to get pressure into the backfield. Now, obviously, Ben Roethlisberger got off the ball quickly, but knowing that this is what Cameron Hayward is good at means that I'm going to have a higher success rate. If I'm over here trying to execute spin moves constantly with Cam Hayward, I'm not going to be very successful. And so that is one of the most important points, is knowing what type of skill move to use for these players. And if you guys want to know what type of skill moves are in the game, make sure you guys go check out my previous video, which was breaking down the new Skillstick and basically listing off the various different skill moves that you can do with your defensive line and your pass rushers. Now, the next tip that I have for you guys is to utilize all of your players. So what you guys will see here, because I just won that contest against David DeCastro, is he now has the tolerance bar building underneath of his player. You guys will see those little orange squares underneath of David DeCastro when we come up here to the next play. You guys can see he's got 2 orange squares underneath of him. That is his tolerance bar. He is beginning to build up a tolerance against my pass rush moves with Cam Hayward. So that means he's going to be more effective at stopping my pass rush moves as I begin to use them with Cam Hayward. So what you want to do is you want to switch off to somebody else and utilize someone else against an offensive lineman that doesn't have that meter built up. That will allow you to get better pass rush moves and have more effective pass rush moves whenever you're going through and doing these things. So make sure that you guys are utilizing all of your defensive linemen, because as you utilize them, the offensive linemen will build up a tolerance to you, and as you utilize your defensive linemen, you're going to generate pressure from different spots. That one is very crucial. Now, here is another tip for you guys. As you guys can see, I utilized Cam Hayward on this play and ran straight into a double team. So the next tip that I want to give you guys is to manually move your players, physically move them to an advantageous position so that you can get one-on-one situations, or don't utilize the player that's going to be going into a double team. So pre-play here, we can see that there are 2 offensive linemen blocking Stephon Tuitt. We can see here that Cam Hayward is in a one-on-one matchup with DeCastro. Matt Filer is in a one-on-one matchup, unless the tight end stays in, against TJ Watt over here on the side. And we can also see on the left side that Bud Dupree's in a one-on-one matchup with Villanueva. So at the start of the play, we want to either utilize Bud Dupree, who's in a one-on-one matchup, or we want to use Cam Hayward or TJ Watt, who are in their one-on-one matchups. We don't want to utilize Stephon Tuitt. However, if I make the determination that I specifically want to utilize Stephon Tuitt, I can do a couple different things to get him in a position to use him. I can press the left arrow and move the D-line to the left, where now Stephon Tuitt is in a single one-on-one matchup, and Cam Hayward is the one being double teamed. So as you guys can see there, I'm able to get the power rush off with Stephon Tuitt and get a nice pressure on the quarterback and get that sack. Alternatively, if I want to leave Cam Hayward in a one-on-one matchup, I can manually move Tuitt to the left, and that leaves the center with no one to block, and all 4 players should end up in a one-on-one matchup if they snap the ball as it is right now. So let's see there. We do end up getting Pouncey come over and block us. So, it's going to be hit or miss utilizing that strategy. But I highly recommend that if you're trying to get like a Tuitt, for example, into the correct spot, that you move the defensive line utilizing the defensive shift. So you take the left arrow and you move the defensive line in whichever direction you need them to be. So in this case, Stephon Tuitt, I can get him over into a single one-on-one matchup with Chukwuma Okorafor, which is a favorable matchup for me because he's a worse offensive lineman and I'm a very good defensive lineman that has a good power move. So that is my next tip. And then the following tip after that is I want to discuss switching up your depth chart in order to basically negate the tolerance built up by offensive linemen. So you guys can see there that Chukwuma Okorafor is starting to build up a tolerance to Stephon Tuitt's moves because he keeps doing the same moves over and over again. The offensive lineman gets used to it. So those are player specific. If I take my defensive linemen and I switch them on the depth chart, those tolerances go away. So if I go to rushing D-tackle, for example, and I flip these 2 players, you guys will notice that the tolerances should go away unless they've patched it. So once I go to the next play, you guys should see that these tolerances for Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt and the offensive linemen that they're going up against should disappear. So see, as you can see, these tolerances for the offensive linemen have now disappeared. And you guys can see with Cam Hayward, the tolerance against him is showing up for David DeCastro still, but because he's not going up against David DeCastro, the offensive linemen he's going up against don't have the tolerance to withstand his pass rush moves. Likewise with Tuitt on the right side, Pouncey and Chukwuma Okorafor have built up a tolerance, but he's no longer going up against them. So this is a tip that is really helpful for you guys. If the offensive line is really hammering away and building up a tolerance to what you're doing, you can move your guys around on the depth chart in order to negate that. That is a very, very important point for you guys to remember, because that's going to allow you guys to get more pressure. Now the next move is to switch, or the next point is to switch up which moves you're doing. So, well, you know, with Stephon Tuitt, if I go ahead and I do a, or let's say we go with Bud Dupree, and I try to do a pass rush move to the outside, what's going to happen is he's going to get used to that, and that's where his tolerance is going to build up. So if we go here, we can see that Villanueva is starting to build up a tolerance to the outside. You guys can see that he has 2 clicks on the left side and 1 click on the right side. So if I notice that that's happening, I need to start going with different moves to avoid that tolerance from building up to the same move over and over again, because that's what will happen. Likewise, my next tip is to switch up the direction of your moves. So if you see that, you know, your guy is just constantly pass rushing outside, that might lead to the offensive lineman building up a tolerance to that and preventing you from pass rushing outside. So if I know that I'm not getting any effective pass rush with the outside here with Bud Dupree, I need to consider switching up the direction of the moves that I'm making and consider making a move to the inside of Alejandro Villanueva, like this, doing a club move to the inside or something of that nature. If you switch up the direction of your moves and you switch up which moves you're doing, you're going to be much more effective in generating pressure against the offense. That is one of the top tips that I can give you guys that is going to help your game tremendously. Now, another tip that I want to give you guys is letting your pass rush meter build up in order to be able to effectively pass rush the quarterback. So, you know, you guys will know that above these players' heads, they have a pass rush meter. And, you know, Stephon Tuitt, for example, has 1, Cam Hayward has 1, but TJ Watt has 5. What this means is the number of moves that you can make before your player is no longer able to make moves. So if I do a pass rush move with Stephon Tuitt here, he can do 1 pass rush move and then he's done. But it's more effective to pass rush with a guy like TJ Watt that has a full meter, because it allows me to do multiple moves in succession, which is going to increase your chance of success. If you're constantly rushing with guys that only have 1 move available, you're going to be facing much less success. So you guys can see I just did an effective swim move. Obviously, Ben Roethlisberger got rid of the ball, but I did 2 different moves here with TJ Watt in order to generate this pressure. So you guys can see I went to the outside. It wasn't open, so I ended up doing a swim move to the inside, and he was able to beat the offensive lineman. Had the quarterback held onto the ball a second longer, TJ Watt would be coming in for pressure on the quarterback. So if you guys are, you know, having trouble getting pass rush, getting pass rushes, part of that issue might be the fact that you're pass rushing specifically, or you're using specifically the guys that don't have a full meter. If you're using guys with less pass rush moves, you're giving yourself less chance of success. If you use a guy with a full pass rush meter, you're going to have multiple opportunities to perform moves, get off that block, and get pressure on the quarterback. So that is one of the biggest things to remember whenever you're pass rushing, is don't pass rush with the guys that just don't have the available moves in order to do it. Now, the other thing, essentially, that is the last tip here that I've already kind of covered as we've gone through, is avoid pass rushing against the guys that have a tolerance. So if we look as I go across the O-line here, this guy has a tolerance against Tuitt. You know, obviously the right tackles build up a tolerance, the left tackles build up a tolerance, but Cam Hayward, there's nobody that's built up a tolerance to him. So I'm going to choose him to pass rush because nobody's built up a tolerance to his moves, which means that he's going to more effectively be able to rush the quarterback. I want to rush with the offensive lineman that has the best matchup. So if these guys don't have a tolerance built up to what he's doing, that's the guy that I'm going to want to use, or I'm going to want to shift my defense in a way that he gets the one-on-one matchup, and he's going to be the one that allows me to get the pressure. So I shift my defensive line over, try to get Cam Hayward a one-on-one matchup, and now I'm rushing against an offensive lineman that has no tolerance towards what moves I'm trying to do, and that should allow me to get more pressure because I'm taking advantage of the matchup in that situation. So you guys can see I did have a green, I had a successful move, but Pouncey came over to help block, so I was ineffective there. But that is the final tip of what you guys want to do. You guys want to effectively know what the matchups are and read who has the biggest tolerance against your guys and which players are, you know, most effective to go up against. Because in this situation, you know, I'm not going to want to rush up against David DeCastro because he's got a three bar tolerance against to it, and you know, with Watt on the outside, Filer's built up quite a tolerance to him as well, so that could create problems for me. Maybe I want to take advantage of one of the guys that is fresher, one of the guys that isn't so used to what I'm trying to do in terms of pass rushing, and take advantage of that. Hopefully these 10 tips have helped you guys. I will recap them here in a second, but I really want you guys to know that essentially mixing up what you're doing is going to be the most effective way to get to the quarterback. They made it this way because they don't want you just utilizing your best pass rusher all game and just basically coming free and leading the league with like 30 sacks and breaking the sack record. They eliminated that this year. So what you need to do is vary what you're doing. You know, move players around, choose different players to pass rush, know what's going on with the offensive line. And so my 10 tips to recap are knowing your players' stats, knowing the offensive line stats, using the correct style of moves for those specific players, utilizing all of your players across the pass rush, you know, physically moving your players to better spots in order to open up one-on-one matchups, switching up which moves you're using, switching up the direction of your moves, switch up your depth chart so that you can essentially negate the tolerance of the offensive line as they build it up against you and get better matchups. Let your pass rush meter build up and use pass rushers that have a more full meter, and then avoid pass rushing against players that have a built-up tolerance against you. Those are my tips that are going to help you guys out get more sacks as you guys go through. As you guys can see in my franchise videos, if you have seen them, I get quite a few sacks with my defensive line, and we have a rule in our league that we only utilize the defensive line to kind of essentially minimize the unrealism of covering with a user player. So hopefully this helps you guys out, generate more pressure with the user skill stick this year on the D-line. It's a fantastic animation, or a fantastic, not animation, but a mechanic that they've added to the game. I love the fact that they've added this. It makes the D-line play a lot more realistic, in my opinion, and it's a ton of fun to use. So hopefully this helps you guys out. Hopefully you guys can get more pressure with your D-line and your pass rushers by utilizing these 10 tips. And if this does help you guys out, make sure you guys drop a like on the video, comment down below with anything else you guys would like to see in future videos, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow in the next video.